Today we're hiking somewhere in New Jersey because hiking is all we can do in this lockdown. No really where else to go. We just have to stay physically distant from other people. So on this hike I figured let's talk about data we usually miss during processing and review. And I kind of touched on this before, but I want to go a little bit more into it. I had some people who emailed me suggesting me ideas for this topic and what else I should talk about, so I kind of put it all together into a list and I figured let's talk about it. Now the other thing in this video, we're not going to be talking about practical solutions. We're just going to be doing sort of like be aware of video. I generally hate doing these. I really want to give people like, okay, here's what you should do in this case, but there's probably just too many categories and too many different solutions. So I figured if anything like what we talk about today rings a bell or sounds like you may have a problem with or you're interested, then you can do additional research and perhaps suggest topics for future videos. And then I can dive more deeply into that specific topic. So let's start. Now the first file type we aware of, but we kind of want to ignore it, media files, right? So video and audio files. We know they're there. We know people sending videos to each other and they're maybe some kind of music or sound files, but that's kind of how we justify ignoring them. We kind of put them like, no, they're junk, there's nothing interesting in there. And of course the reason we ignore them is because no one wants to deal with them. You know, you gotta watch the video and like, oh, it's another stupid video, watch something else. But there are legitimate audio files that people send to each other that should be examined. For example, at work, if I get a voicemail, that gets emailed to me as a WAV file. So the content of that voicemail is recorded and could be examined for future use. So yeah, media files are kind of annoying, but sometimes it could be important to look into those and see what you have in your collection. Kind of poke around, examine, is that all junk, is it not all junk? And also it's important to consider what you're looking for. Maybe you are looking for content that was recorded. So then you want to investigate those files further and review them and not just kind of throw them away as, oh, it's junk and it's going to waste a lot of our time looking at them. Now, the other place where we ignore media files is when they're embedded into other documents. When you have like a Word document and something is embedded into it, well, we consider that Word document to get extracted text. And if it got extracted text, we're fine with it. But if there is a picture of like a screenshot that's embedded into Word, and a picture contains valuable information, it will never get OCR'd because processing system will flag the file as processed and text extracted, and it will not try to OCR that screenshot. You know what? I'm kind of out of breath. We're going up on all these rocks, and this is I don't know, I'm out of shape or something. Look at this. This is tiring me out quicker than I wanted it to. Now, the other area where I see we miss data is when we not handle processing errors. I know it's kind of weird, you know, you process your data, you check to make sure everything's there, run your QC checks, whatever you have. But I've gotten so many restores of archives of cases where I've looked and there were a number of issues, like people haven't OCR'd their image type files, and sometimes there were processing sets, like in relativity. And those processing sets had errors which haven't been resolved. There were legitimately like errors that are just still there, and the documents were not published because fields were too small. And the document was just hanging in a staging area and never made it into the workspace. So yeah, QC your processing, make sure your errors are resolved. Okay, now it's also raining too. Sweat, rain, everything. Okay, so the next file type that I'm thinking of is thumbs.db, and we love to hate those files. They're annoying, they pop up everywhere, and we just like delete them and throw them out. And usually we're right, we don't need them. There is no practical use for them. However, if we do an investigation, it's actually pretty cool to see what's inside of them, because what they can do is they can prove what has been in a folder at one point. And I did a whole video on that where you can actually go in and download like a thumbsdb viewer and go in and poke around the files and get like little thumbnails of pictures that used to be in certain folders. A little thumbnail is much better than nothing, so you could prove that a certain picture exists and even get a shape or maybe a person's face, what it looked like. So yeah, thumbsdb could be worth investigating. All right, I think we reached our destination on top. This is it, these rocks, this is where we were going. Sorry, there might be water on the lens, but I'll clean it up in a second. Oh, Hello.
What's up? You made it. We
Made it. Yes, we all made it.
We all
Awesome.
survived. Everyone's
Wow, what a view. Ah, that is awesome. Okay, and of course, we have to address text messages, right? We're dealing with text messages a lot, and everyone's got a different way of handling them. And usually what happens with text messages, sometimes they get searched inside forensic software, which means not all the content is indexed properly. Sometimes the data gets searched inside the review software, but we don't know how data got loaded there. Sometimes it gets loaded with a processing engine, and sometimes it gets loaded with just an overlay. So if it gets loaded as an overlay, you may not have all the searchable text that you possibly could that processing engine would have extracted for you. So thinking about how you're going to handle text messages is important, and how they were handled through all the steps up to the review part. So those are the general categories of data we could be missing. There are a few other ones like deleted files. We don't usually deal with them too much. We had clients asking us, can you give us deleted files? And when they get them, they're like, how do I look at this? How do I review? This is all junk. They're all corrupt. Like, yeah, they're deleted. They're fragments. And the same way, you also have unallocated space and a slack space. Unallocated space is like the empty space on the hard drive that used to be occupied by files, and the slack space is the remains of a cluster that could have been occupied by a file in the past. But those are generally useless because most of the files now are like zip files, and when you get a fragment of a zip file, it's not like a text file. You can't really do much with it. So those are generally the file categories that we usually miss when processing or working with data. Now I'm gonna head up all the way down, see how high we up. So it's gonna be fun going down, being all wet. If you have any file types or categories of files that we usually don't think about when we process, review, and so on, please put them in the comment section below. And as usual, like, subscribe, do all the YouTube, LinkedIn stuff. I'll see you in the next video. Wasn't bad on the way down. It was a little slippery because it was wet, but let me show you where we were. Okay, so this is the mountain we went up on, and the rocks, where are they? Right there. Yeah, that's my finger pointing. Okay, that's where we were, on that ledge up there. So that is how far we climbed.